how's it going? Kevin Cleary here, and we have another Shirogorov on the channel. This is an F95. This is my knife. I got it off the secondary market. I got this from a fellow Canadian on Canadian Knife and Gear is where he posted this for sale, and I was able to pick this up, so I'm pretty stoked about it. As you know, I've previously had an F3. There are a number of models of Shirogorov out there. I don't have any intention or desire to own all of them or anything like that. But you guys also know, if you've been around the channel for a little while, I'm trying to sort of narrow down my collection a little bit and be a little more discerning about the knives I keep for the long term. And in my effort to do that, there were a few slots that I wanted to fill in, and I wanted to have a Shirogorov in that sort of core collection. Now, as I said, I previously had an F3, and I loved the F3, and I ultimately sold mine thinking I would go with a different color, but ended up at the F95. And so at the very least, I wanted to try the 95 for a while, see what I thought of it. And if I still think I prefer the F3, then it'll be a pretty simple thing to either sell this or trade it for an F3. So that's what may happen. It's not certainly in my plans, and at this point, I'm pretty stoked about this knife. So there are a couple things that I like a little bit better than the F3. That's one of the things we'll cover in this video with it in terms of the first impression. Did come with, of course, a certificate of authenticity and some paperwork from Shirogorov. Sadly, my wife got a hold of the box before I got there. She thought it was something else. She does not know enough about knives to recognize the Bear logo, so I'll have to do a little bit of taping to fix that box up again, but not the end of the world. Now, I was curious to check out a 95 for a very particular reason. One, I love the micarta inlays, and by the way, it had to be this version. There are a few versions of the 95 out there. The one I was really interested in was this one and nothing else. All the others, I would take an F3 over them, but this one is really attractive to me, and I just like a lot of things about it, and I'll talk about that next. So the size and weight on this is what I'll give you here in a second. And that's the primary thing. This is just a hair smaller than the F3 and a hair slimmer. And that's the primary reason I really wanted to try this out. So the F3 is, 8 and almost 7/8, and this is closer to 8 3/4. I mean, it's not a huge difference there. The blade length is right there at 4 inches, where this is a little closer to 3 3/4 inches. Both of the handles are around 5 inches. This is just, again, a little bit smaller. The F3, one thing that's notable about it is it's quite thick. So it's over 1/2 inch thick, where this is just a 1/2 inch thick. So that was one of the primary considerations. This also weighs just a little bit less at 4.6 ounces, which is not a lot. I mean, the F3 is only just over 5 ounces, so not a big deal. But because of those slightly smaller dimensions, I felt like this might be a little easier to carry. And I really like the micarta on this. I love just the overall design. I find this to be by far my favorite expression of the 95. And really, other than the F3, the Shirogorov that I was most drawn to. All right. And so I was able to work it out that I could get this, and I am pretty happy that I did. Now, it's as you can see, it's secondary market. It's got a little bit of wear on it. I will clean up this micarta as well as clean out the pivot. I mean, the action is fantastic. It really is. But I suspect it can be even a little bit better. So I'll clean this up and see what happens when I put a little bit of KPL in there and clean things out a little. Now, what are my overall thoughts on this knife? Well, listen, guys, if you've been around the knife world for a while, you know the Shirogorovs are well known for having just superb action, and they really do a fantastic job of putting a great knife together. I've handled a few of them now. In addition to the ones I'd handled a couple before I got my F3. Subsequent to that, I did go to Blade, so I got an opportunity to handle a couple there. And now this, and look, guys, Shirogorov does a great job. Now, I'm not arguing for a second that this is a knife that everyone should go out and buy and own. Oh, by the way, I better give you a rundown. I'm completely getting into my final conclusions. Before I do that, let's take a quick look at this guy. So we've got a Stonewash LMAX blade. There's one mark right there on the blade. Of course, the original owner warned me about that before, and so I was able to get a bit of a deal on this because, as you can see, it's got a little bit of wear on it. Nothing serious, but there is some wear. It is single row bearings, and let's see if I can show you. There you go. So right back there, you can see that circle with the one individual dot around it. So that tells you Shirogorovs will have that mark to indicate what kind of bearing system they are running. We have micarta inlay, titanium. If you look inside, there's no internal milling, but it is just a single standoff. Bit of a relief cut there, and then a nice little sort of cut in area to accommodate the clip, and a typical Shirogorov clip that most of us have seen before, as well as the typical Shirogorov hardware. And I will add, I've already talked about the action, but I'll say it one more time. Typical Shirogorov action. It is very, very nice. And I anticipate it getting just a little bit nicer. Now, let me finally go into my final thoughts on this, or my initial thoughts on this. The first thing is, the main thing I want to say here is, as expected, this is a little slimmer and a little more carryable than the F3. It's not going to be quite as noticeable in pocket. It weighs a little bit less. Now, you do sacrifice something, although very, very little in terms of feel in hand. The F3 does feel just a little more comfortable because of that extra thickness and that extra contouring that they do on the G10 with it, but this is spectacular. I don't know if I mentioned, this is the LMAX blade. So, by the way, there are grades of Shirogorov. So you can go like M390, multi-row bearings, probably needle bearings, and a few other options, and all of those things are going to add to the cost of that. And, there are various discernible grades of Shirogorov knives, and this is about the bottom tier, okay? And it's still spectacular, but you can go much, much higher with these. Now, that's the other thing that we have to talk about. I mentioned it with the F3, I'll mention it with this too. These do not come cheap, okay? You're not picking one of these up for, a few $100. You're going to be north of $500 for sure. Retail on these, I think in the US, is between $700 and $800, and retail on the F3 is $700, like $695 or $699 or something like that. Sometimes you can find a better deal if you go outside of the US, but many of those dealers will not ship into the US. I'm not in the US, so that's one little benefit that we get from living outside of the US. You can order a Shirogorov from some Russian dealers for a slightly better price, although it's still very, very expensive. Now, who is this knife for, and why was I interested in it? Well, look, guys, I'm a reviewer, I'm an enthusiast, and so for me, having something that is near the very top of, high-end production knife making is interesting and valuable for the channel. It's valuable for comparisons. When we talk about the action on other knives, when everyone knows, Shirogorov is reputed to be the best, then it makes a difference that I can pull out a Shirogorov and say, hey, yeah, this is how close they really are. The other thing that I want to say about this is this rounds out a goal that I had. I really wanted to have a few knives that, in my mind, were sort of the ultimate expression of a high-end knife, and I will do a whole video on that probably in the next couple of days. You can look for that. I think this will probably post Wednesday, so maybe by Friday look for my core collection video where I'll update you on the main knives that I want to make sort of the heart of my collection, and outside of those, things may come and go either for just review or because I do plan to keep them, but they're not going to be sort of the untouchables that make up the heart of the collection. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of this knife. Is a Shirogorov something that you have always thought you might want to get? Is it something where the price puts you off immediately and you go, forget it, I would never even dream of that? Or perhaps it's not the price, but you just feel like, if I'm going to spend that kind of money, I want something else. And so I'd love to hear what the something else might be. Is it a Holt Spectre? Is it, well, forget about a Chamois. They're like triple the price of this by this point. But there are some other really nice high-end knives out there, and there's some pretty close competitors. The Chebrikov knives are similar in aesthetics. There are some nice WE knives that are similar. There are, definitely some knives out there that sort of put me in mind of the Shirogorov. So anyway, lots of things to consider there, and I would love to hear your thoughts down below. Don't forget to go over to DLT Trading. I'll put a link down there. Using that link, that's my favorite place to get higher end stuff, you know, Hinderers and Nkoses. And I don't think they carry Shirogorovs because I'm pretty sure there's only one dealer in the US, but lots of nice high-end stuff over there, and I like dealing with DLT. Even shipping to Canada, they've been fantastic. In fact, the last thing I got from them was here in like 5 days, which is outstanding considering you have to deal with the border and all that stuff. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Thanks for using that link, and we will talk to you soon.